I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've both been skull and bone, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322.
I sad duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
What the fuck is up, guys?
My God, brother, that edit for real. I swear to God. I meant every word of what I said on Twitter, dude. Like, I want to run through a fucking wall. You know what I mean? Like,
I do want to give a quick shout out at the Thin Line 123. That's who made that edit. That's probably like one of my favorite edits, and like I'm kind of partial when it comes to the Yeeky edits. So it's like that's kind of a new favorite. That's up there. that one slaps. For those who are wondering what's going on here, we have decided to start a new weekly sort of like variety conspiracy show, I think. I know the format may change as time goes on. The idea I have in mind for now is the second half, like so 45 minutes of us just kind of talking stuff and 45 minutes of like call-ins. So, and how these call-ins are going to work is it will be StreamYard, and for my patrons, they have access already to it. But this is kind of a filtering thing. I don't want to have like too many people in the queue, like for me to try to filter through. But so they get first dibs. So if they get into the queue earlier to where I can see them, I can bring them up. But now for those who, don't want to pay us money for now, maybe as the future goes on, it may become an only Patreon thing just to filter out so there's not too many people. But for now, I'm probably going to like midway in the show tweet out the StreamYard link for those who do want to participate in that part. But for now, the patrons, it's already up there. So if you go over to patreon.com/NoWayJose2020, it'll be up there. I'm not going to do these normal introductions. These shows are going to be more cold open. And I'm going to do my normal hawking my wares towards the end. And I know my patrons, as part of one of the perks for the high up guys, but just for the sake of this live stream and the vibe, I think it makes more sense. I'll still do that for the normal No Way Jose thing, but we're going to be doing this live stream thing, at least for now, every week, give or take. Maybe there might be a week that you can't or I can't, or there's some other thing where I have to swap days, but we're shooting for Tuesdays about this time every week, and this is going to be the format, I think. What are your thoughts, Austin? Do you like this format? I mean, we kind of just threw this together last second, kind of crowd shared ideas as we went. At least I did. Kind of like, what do you guys think about this? So trying to get the idea for the art, the edit, the name. We settled on Already Dead, which is playing off the motif.
What's so crazy about that, though, is that when you messaged me that, or actually, I think you just tweeted it. I can't remember now. You might have DM'd me it. But anyway, when you mentioned that, I had literally just finished telling my wife like that. That's kind of the one I'm leaning towards so far that I like the most. But I should first say shout out to Namrock for the idea and pitching the idea as well, because he's been nothing but cool to me throughout my experience. So it's been nice, to chop it up with him.
It wasn't even our original idea. That was an idea that came from the audience. Namrock, who's a fucking, he's dope. I've had a lot of talks with him. And yeah, just fucking, threw it out there, both of us, like, you guys should do a weekly show. And I was like, yeah, because I think me and you have kind of sparked it off a little bit, kind of hit it off. Kind of the equivalent when it comes to podcasters of that, like, you left your, like, toothbrush at my house type deal. Like, I think we're just kind of like, we're at this point where our intellectual curiosities have merged. So that's kind of where we are. We're in the stage of our relationship. So I think it's, makes sense, instead of like getting a home together, we'll just, start a podcast together. So here we are.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
It honestly is better for me. I really wanted this inevitably to have something that would kind of scratch an alternative itch that I couldn't myself with my own podcast, like by myself. I don't really want to change the way that I do it as far as how I do my personal podcast. So it's nice. It pulls me out of the dark rabbit holes I jumped down head first. And I get to kind of, at least like pay attention to some more surface level, I guess, material that's going on. Like, I don't know, Diddy butt fucking Meek Mill and becoming the new Epstein of the rap industry. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just absolutely crazy, man. I mean, and honestly, seeing that, what is that guy's name that's been killing it on those videos? Ian something. I can't remember his last name.
Oh, yeah. He's like big on TikTok, I think. I mean, obviously he's big on Twitter too, but he's like killing it. Yeah. He's like, and he's like pretty damn good. Like, he's not like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I haven't watched all of his stuff, but it's not like kooky out there. Like, be like, hey, here's the facts. Like, here's where I'm being speculative, and it's like, this paints a very dark picture. I don't know what to fucking tell you.
I know, right? I like that though, because at least like he's not making as many enemies. Maybe it'll reach more of an audience, more people. They won't necessarily only fall onto one side of the spectrum politically, but I don't know. It has been crazy though. And seeing one of them was talking about Michael Jackson and all of that. And I have heard like, Tripoli's done a few episodes with some people talking who brought up that Michael Jackson shit. And
and I don't remember, they brought up some, I remember watching that episode and they brought up some, I mean, I think he's on multiple episodes, but at least one of them I was never listening to, and I was like, brought up some good fucking points.
Dude, some of them very compelling, worth looking into, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And so ever since then, because it wasn't really my area of interest. Like, I'm sure like at some point I might end up there, but I'm not really like, kind of like seeking out a Michael Jackson episode, right? Like, I don't know. But honestly, after this P. Diddy shit hit the news, I was like, oh my God, bro, I'm gonna have to do a fucking episode about P. Diddy. Right.
Which, speaking of, I did want to bring up, I've had so many people, I don't know why, I don't know if it's just like just got really hot, I don't know if maybe it did just drop or what. I don't pay attention to the streaming services or watch nearly enough TV to fucking know, but I'm guessing the Octopus Calcinaro type thing just dropped recently, because a lot of people are like, have you seen that? I'm like, no, I barely watch TV. But so I did watch the first episode, and I know I believe you covered that. You were probably like a good few weeks ahead of this. Dude, I mean, I don't know if you were aware they were about to do it or what. Or
while I was doing my research, I ran across the fact that it was scheduled. Netflix was going to do something about this, and I was like, "What the hell?" But honestly, I felt like, "Wow, well, that might fall perfect then." I might get a little more traction whenever it drops as well on that episode, but which it seems to have happened. I mean, I've had a few people hit me up and at least like show support for the episode since this series has dropped. So that's cool. Yeah. I'm going to have to, honestly, it's going to send me back down, the octopus rabbit hole, because honestly, like I remember, like, it's hard to remember that level of detail and recall it perfectly at all times, but I do remember that Michael Riconosciuto was like, he did say a few compelling things, but he's one of those guys that you can't rely on them.
Shady.
Yeah,
he's
shady,
like very gray. You're like, you could be saying some shit that's like, okay, but like, I mean, I don't know enough about the story. I only watched the first episode, and my awareness of Riconosciuto, or how the fuck you say his name, is like, yes, he was had some part in this call scenario. I forget the details. Like, I only watched the first episode, and I've also listened to yours, but I forgot most of the stuff from that. But he's also showed up in the OKC bombing narrative.
Yeah, that's
For those
what I
who
saw
have
Richard
researchers,
say,
yeah,
was
he
like, holy
was the
shit.
guy. I don't know. I forget which bomb it was. Some sort of neutron bomb or some shit. Some like high tech, highfalutin type shit. And like he was the one who kind of seemed to bring out information, whether it was leaks or what. That was like, looks like this could be the case, and then that ended up being the thing that later Rick Sharrow slammed or tried to slam dunk, like to dispute against any alternative bombing theories. He took the most ridiculous one and trashed it, and then barely touched on the actual ones that most people were saying. Which I do want to say, the neutron bomb thing, I don't fucking know. I mean, like, that's probably one of the least likely things if I had to guess. I mean, maybe. I don't fucking know. Apparently, there is some truth to it, to that it was some sort of thing that existed or some shit.
Right.
But, like, it did seem like an outside of left field in, like, a very odd way that if they were going to do that. And I'll be honest, I am partial towards the bombs inside the building narrative when it comes to OKC. That's not something I would assert, because I do think that's like held up on so much like bombing analysis knowledge and other stuff that I really just couldn't say with certainty. But you know, just knowing some of the characters in my, like, not that I have a deep knowledge of it, the depth that I have, I'm like, I'm thinking something's going on here, a little more than just an info bomb. But either way, the neutron bomb was the thing that he came out with. So that's what people bring up as why, like, he may be some sort of disinfo agent to some extent or something. So
and
I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, and I mean, there's this theory that he was basically set up at the end of all of that this in order to end up serving a prison sentence in the end, and you know, but how they work with these spooks work in shady, dark holes, you know, of the you know, of covert
people
intelligence.
Say, well, he's in prison, he can't be a disinfo agent. That's kind of like what people get at, and you're like, but, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you've read Program to Kill, but, like, the thesis in that is kind of the idea that they have these psychos that they almost, like, let them on and off the leash, like, in prison, and they have, like, cushy lives in prison. And it's like they're kind of like let slip the dogs of war of the state type deal. You know, particularly like serial killers. So it's like, well, I mean, is it really that crazy that they would take some other guy and be like, you know, especially someone that's easily manipulated and be like, yeah, you're still going to jail. We'll make this cushy for you or whatever. I don't know his situation. I'm just completely talking on my ass. I mean, your alternative is we kill you or your family or whatever.
I'm pretty sure his narrative was that he was about to talk and actually testify on some, you know, legitimate grounds about, if I remember, and again, I'm going to have to go back through my research again just to refresh my memory, because I'm pretty sure it was basically that he was going to talk, so they had what he was working with them doing, which was basically running drugs through the Cabazon Indian Reservation, among other things, which I do believe that he was definitely involved with that, you know. So it's very difficult, because when someone like that says something very compelling, it's hard to just entirely dismiss it on his face.
Well, the same goes for Gunderson. I mean, I haven't really dug deep enough into the character of Gunderson to really know, but it is a common one. He is just the simple fact that he's prior intel leaves you in a spot where you're like,
right,
I don't know if I should take what you're saying, especially if you're not providing any sources. And, like, don't get me wrong, a lot of the stuff he said, especially, you know, in modern day context, on the stuff Gunderson said in the past, really does ring true now. So you're like, maybe he was legit and he just was like to some extent saw the light or something or whatever, and he wasn't some disinfo, but just the simple existence of disinfo agents like fed jackets so many fucking people just like by like a knee-jerk reaction, you know what I mean? And I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I would be willing to accept either way because he is prior intel, so I've always been very sketchy with anything Gunderson says. But I mean, for those who know, I've interviewed Yiki. She's talked to him. She vouched for, like, she really liked him and blah blah.
She made me feel better.
I don't know. Yeah.
I've relied on him a few times as far as over the years with certain things, and he has done some damn good work. So I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed a lot of what he did with McMartin. I think it was very important, you know. But I agree, though. I mean, you can never fully rely on those people, at least entirely trust them. in the wise words of Tripoli, like, you better be in karate stance at all times, and which, by the way, I saw his special. I saw his first taping on Sunday, bro. He killed it, man. I was so impressed. I was like inspired leaving, man. Like it was amazing. Like I've gotten to see him at the Comedy Store a few times, but like during Comedy Chaos and stuff. But he's typically just hosting, so he does a few bits while he's introducing the next comic and stuff. But but I never got to really watch him for a full hour. And man, he's my style of comedy. He's our style of comedy, I would think. But
no,
but
for sure. We've had him on Tower Gang before.
Yeah. I know.
Which, speaking of, I do want to bring it up now. I believe it's like the end of this month. He's coming to somewhere in Florida, and the Nephilim Death Squad guys, Clint. So like, there's like 2/5 of Tower Gang plus then Raven from Nephilim Death Squad. And they're going to be doing some sort of event. I'm assuming he's doing comedy. I assume there'll probably be some sort of live podcast as well. So that's pretty dope. I mean, I wish I could go to it. Maybe I could. I don't know. I probably should have got in on that. It's just I'm always so fucking busy, and any spare time I have, I try to spend with my family. So,
dude, I'm a homebody myself. Like too often, I just like, man. But moments like that, I just felt like I knew it would mean something to Sam, and I just wanted him to like know like how much I appreciate him for everything, and and also I got the chance to finally get to meet him in person, which was super cool. But he's just the best kind of person, man.
Yeah, he's super cool, super wholesome. I remember it was like a multiple month process in scheduling my episode of Tinfoil Hat, a long ass process. But dealing with him throughout, he's a sweetheart. He really is. I mean, he's not very well organized, but he's a sweetheart.
100%, bro. But by the way, the Adam from Deborah Gets Red Pilled, he hit me up about the octopus, right? And he finished it, I'm pretty sure, and he messaged me, I believe yesterday or something like that, and he said, I asked his thoughts because he asked me basically if I had watched it yet, and he said it was pretty good actually. He wasn't entirely impressed with just the fact that it wasn't probably going down some of the most like controversial areas of interest, but at the same time it's like I think it's just super valuable that at the very least it's going to be introduced to a lot of people on a mainstream platform. So I mean, honestly, I didn't think they would ever cover that story.
I mean, I was going through it with my wife, and like it was a documentary, so she wasn't interested at all. She's like, "This is fucking boring." But I just happened to have it on, and like as she's going, she's like, "Well, why would you do that? Why would you do that?" And I'm like explaining to her like the motivations of like, "Well, why would they kill him?" And it's like, or why would they not just she was like confused about the idea of like with the ownership of that original program or whatever, like why they would go through the process of trying to run them out of business. And like, well, it's kind of like an IP thing. If they run these guys out of business, they can just take their thing and do whatever with it. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't the government just like, they already have a contract with them, they can do whatever. I'm like, well, I would assume that this guy has a contract and they're only able to use it for these limited things. Whereas if the government owns it, they can use it for whatever the fuck they want and not tell you about it. So.
Right. And the craziest part was that basically the government, they illegally implemented that backdoor in the software while they were contracted with Promise, right, in Slaw. And so it was just like, man, like, and so they were already like breaking the law, just, distorting his software like that. And then, but they never had like, at least in my opinion, their overall intention was to steal the software. Right. Yeah. And so, that was basically it. And
even then I was like, remember explaining to my wife, because she's like, I don't get why this is even such a big deal. And you're like, well, if you understand, I'm like a tech idiot, but I'm like, if you understand the simple concept of like what this was revolutionary at the time, the idea that it would take other databases and pool information and find relationships with, like, this is the building bones of things like Google, and the government was getting an exclusive like layup into this, and immediately latched onto it and took it as their own. So it's like, what kind of lead did they give them? What kind of alternate future did this create?
Exactly. I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to my own episode and then read some more about it, honestly, because it is one of the craziest stories of all time, and it goes in so many different directions. It really is like the octopus. Like, it's such a perfect thing, honestly. But that I really believe, though, I think the most important story there is what happened at the Cabazon Indian Reservation during all of that. Because, I mean, we're talking homicides, advanced weapons testing, everything, under the sun that you could imagine our intelligence agencies doing, they were doing at that Indian reservation. So I don't know. It's an extraordinary story, but I definitely don't trust that Netflix, grappled with the most important threads.
I mean,
but
I already am watching it from the lens of like, this is Netflix, but I'm like, okay, all right, this is like kind of like, hardcore normie shit. All right.
Right.
Like, I'll take it, whatever. By the way, guys, we just broke 100. So if you guys would you guys want to share this out, we can get that number up. I'm kind of surprised. We're doing well for a debut. So I'm glad you guys showed up. Let's, I guess, kind of get into the first main topic before we get in the call-in. For those who are curious, about 25 minutes we'll go into the call-in portion. So if people want to start filing in, those who already have the link, and I will probably tweet it out in about another 20 minutes. But you said you had some, you wanted to go into some stuff you're researching for an upcoming episode. I told you not to tell me much information because I want to be surprised. It seems to be, and almost every time you drop a new episode, it's like, already either is like straight on the path of something I was already like spurging on, or it's like tangential to it, to where it's like this will be a good little information nugget to add to my understanding of this thing I'm already looking into, other thing. So I'm kind of curious where you are now. It is cool seeing our like semi-parallel thinking as we move forward in this world. So I'm just kind of curious, what are you covering now, and what specific piece of that did you want to bring to us for today?
So I was pretty much like, I was brainstorming over what I was going to do for this upcoming episode, and I was really leaning toward the Beast of Belgium and Marc Dutroux.
Oh shit, yeah.
but then I was like, maybe next week. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give it one more week, right? And so because it was either that or it was what's his name? Adam from Deborah Gets Red Pill, that I mentioned that he had brought to my attention when I was on his podcast in January. He had mentioned when I believe Jonestown came up, and he had mentioned because I was talking about Luke Joré and the Order of the Solar Temple, and how that basically is another Jonestown that occurred, and like if you look at the revolutionary suicide that allegedly took place in that Belgian cult, it actually resembles Jonestown to such a degree. It's honestly, it's mind blowing. And you look at the overhead aerial pictures, aerial photographs of Luke Joré's mass suicide, and it honestly, I got like goosebumps, dude. It looked exactly like the aerial photographs for Jonestown, in Guyana. And so, it's very, so anyway, what he had mentioned, Adam, is that he brought up Colonia Dignidad, and I had never heard of this, right? And so I don't know how that I had never stumbled on this. Maybe I had, and I just never really fell down the rabbit hole, but I basically went head first. And it's pretty much, it seems like that it was basically Operation Condor, right? And the timing is so crazy, man. And as far as that,
can you give me a refresher? Condor sounds familiar. Sorry if I seemed like I wasn't paying attention. I was setting up the tweet for the StreamYard link for those who guys don't want to pay for Patreon. If you just pay attention to my Twitter, probably the next 20 minutes or so, I'll tweet that out. So then you'll have access to it if you do want to become join in for the live stream, which we're almost at 130. So I assume at least a couple of you guys may want to. But yeah, if you remind me what Condor is, I swear I recall it. I just it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't specifically recall what that is.
All right. So this historian named Patrice McSherry, so based on formerly secret CIA documents from 1976, in the 1960s and early 70s, plans were developed among international security officials at the U.S. Army School of the Americas and the Conference of American Armies to deal with perceived threats in South America and from political dissidents, right?
Yeah.
And so
it was Gladio. It was Gladio in South America, essentially. Yeah.
Basically, it was like this intelligence sharing operation, basically. But it was way more than that, though, because it was like beyond being an intelligence sharing operation. It looks like they were using these various death squads in these South American countries, as well as these intelligence sharing operations with other foreign intelligence agencies, and they basically are carrying out hit lists, right? And it's pretty crazy because it seems like that many of the Nazis who successfully traveled through the rat lines in post-war Germany, they inevitably ended up in areas like Colonia Dignidad, and we're talking about people as prolific as Mengele himself, right? Mm-hmm. And so basically, a declassified CIA document dated 23rd of June in 1976 explains that in early 1974, security officials from Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Bolivia met in Buenos Aires to prepare coordinated actions against subversive targets. American journalist A.J. Languth states in a 1978 book that the organization of the first meetings between Argentinian and Uruguayan security officials concerning the surveillance and subsequent disappearance or assassination of political refugees in these countries can be attributed to coordination by the CIA, and that the CIA also acted as an intermediary in meetings between Argentinian, Brazilian, and Uruguayan death squads. Founded by the Pinochet regime in November 1975, Operation Condor was the code name for a formal Southern Cone collaboration that included transnational secret intelligence activities, kidnapping, torture, disappearance, and assassination, according to the National Security Archives documentary evidence from U.S., Paraguayan, Argentine, and Chilean files, right?
Yeah, Phoenix became a condor when it moved to South America.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, for real. They literally were just kind of recycling similar birds with some sort of, demure or whatever the word is I'm looking for in that given area. I just finished an Operation Phoenix book or audiobook, and that was Phoenix was chosen because it was kind of like embedded in the lore of the area, and it was kind of like a majestic bird. And dude, so I'd assume condors, that is a very distinct thing for, I don't know how tied that is to the culture, but I mean, it's just the same, basic motif of they didn't even really, we're just doing Phoenix over here. And that's the same, that's basically what they were doing with Phoenix. They had essentially hit lists. I mean, when they got pressed on it, I believe it became shit like, this was only exterminate if you had to. Plenty of people came out no, we were just fucking murdering them. Exactly, and a lot of times they were straight up doing terror operations, terrorizing areas, killing entire families, and then even in or leaving fucking the carpet bombing areas, leaving fucking heads on pikes, all sorts of crazy shit, just to fuck with the locals, exactly, and be man. Hey, strategy of tension, Gladio, Phoenix, man. Condor, what is it? What does that apply to today? I don't know. That's kind of what the question is when it comes to modern day. People are interested in the stuff we're interested in.
Yeah. And at Colonia Dignidad, they were they were training Chilean death squads and Chilean intelligence agents on how to actually, basically they were training them in NK Ultra techniques from the Nazi scientists, and 100%. I mean, that's what Paul Schaefer was doing while he was there. And Paul Schaefer, who's the head of this alleged cult, actually fled Germany after he first volunteered in a church's orphanage, and then inevitably he was outed for pedophilia. And so then he is, they say that he basically traveled through the rat lines to get down to Chile. But in reality, he had he had claimed to he started his own after he was outed for being a pedophile. He started his own orphanage, and so he couldn't get fired this time. And he basically, it was also like this religious group, and he pretty much he had convinced some of these children by grooming them that one, most of them, some of them clearly they didn't have parents, right? Because it was an orphanage. But then other children who would join the group because he would groom them into the group. He even somehow convinced some parents to sign permission slips for them to go on some sort of trip with him. And then he inevitably just took them and kidnapped them down to Chile, which I thought was very crazy. But anyway, so he travels through the rat lines and gets down there. And then while he's there, he's wielding all these MKUltra techniques. Like right before Jim Jones, it's technically, he travels to Chile in 1961 to set up this cult. The same time that Jim Jones travels to Guyana. Mm-hmm. That's so nuts to me, for the first time when he traveled down there. And that to me was crazy because of the overlap with this Paul Schaefer guy and Jim Jones and their belief system. And they were both basically they were followers of the same individual who was preaching this apocalyptic religious narrative that basically apostolic socialism is what came from, was this ridiculous belief system. But it's so insane how many overlapping threads there are between Jim Jones and this Paul Schaefer guy. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, it seems like there are direct intelligence implications with this cult and this cult group, except the only difference is that there's not there it is exposed, but it isn't exactly the way that it was exposed with Jonestown. And so it's very interesting, but it seems like Paul Schaefer got away with this for decades, right?
And you're saying this was you kind of tied the connection to Operation Condor?
Yeah, 100%.
So that kind of got me thinking. Like in Gladio, that wouldn't really make sense. I mean, I never really heard much from I've read like one book on Gladio, so I'm by no means an expert. But from my recollection, there weren't any reports really of any imprisonment. There was one major imprisonment, but that was some political prisoner essentially that I recall of. But most of it was just like terror attacks, murders. But when you got into Vietnam and then a lot of the South America stuff, it did become a lot about capturing, because then it was like actual legitimate because it was Gladio was about fighting essentially political parties, so right. it took on a different form. It was more about creating that terror to drive people away from the communists essentially. Whereas something it's similar with, I guess actually is kind of the same thing in Vietnam, but with Vietnam we had actually overtly essentially we're in war, so it was a different scenario. So where now these people have less of a human rights in a certain scenario, in the eyes of the world, because war. So we can throw all the fucking rules out the window. Right. And there was a lot of shit where with the Vietnamese where there were reports from I think multiple Phoenix agents where it's none of the people that were there came out in any of their PRU camps, I think, or I know the PIC, I think is the name of their camps there where they would kind of keep people. But so the kind of what I'm driving at here though is that you have these detained people and then you are trying out torture techniques and stuff. It wouldn't really. I feel like there might be some interesting interplay to be explored by some researchers between programs like that and Condor and kind of the torture and stuff, and then how that ties into cults as well, because these are both different aspects of MKUltra. So I'm not really that surprised that there are some direct relationships between these two things, because it's almost like they're just studying different fields of research. Exactly. And so it wouldn't make sense. It would completely make sense to have similar players, since these are your researchers and you want them to have a wide understanding of this information you're trying to impart on your other researchers. So yeah.
Yeah, and even a Guardian article confirmed that basically through these declassified documents, it was traced back to Operation Condor. And I mean, they were talking about this intelligence sharing operation, but that basically that the CIA and various intelligence agencies were wielding these ex-Nazi SS groups to then help train, which, by the way, Mangala ended up going to, I believe, Guatemala or Paraguay. I think it was Paraguay, actually. And that's where he trained Paraguayan police on on how to basically torture people, right? So it's like these ex-Nazi SS members are being sent all over to all these different, dictatorships, and they're training them and training their police forces on MK Ultra techniques, which I just thought was insane. But when you read the Washington Post article, it's like, tell me that you don't actually, the first thing that you feel is this is a repeat of Jonestown, right? I mean, 100%, man. I mean, they, like, the references are exact as well. I mean, you have families of the people in the commune who are basically saying they're being held there against their will, and by the way, I mean, spoiler alert, but I guess I should mention that William Branham was the guy that that Jim Jones and Paul Schaefer both studied under and met physically in person. And Jim Jones actually held revivals with William Branham. And William Branham went to Germany and met Paul Schaefer personally, which I thought
Schaefer was Jones's close friend. Did you say that? I missed that part, right? Because we talked about Leonard Jones, or am I mixing him up with another character?
Mixing him up, yeah.
Oh, okay. By the way, for those who are curious, Jonestown series, it's not all out, but it's completely all behind the paywall. The next one will probably drop Thursday. But for those who want to get finished, or jonesing for it, I've got a lot of good feedback from that. But sorry, go on. I do want to let people know I did just tweet out the link. So if you guys want to start filing in soon, probably have another more 10 minutes of this part of the show. I do have one topic I want to get to. And then once we're done with that, we'll kind of roll into the call-in. So then whoever wants to show up, and then also we'll kind of interact with the live stream more too, depending on how many callers we have and stuff. I saw some stuff in there we want to address. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead and finish what you were saying. I thought you were getting to a point, but I think I cut you off a little bit there, being a dick.
Oh, no, you're okay, man.
Because I was like, wait, shit, Schaefer? And I was like, no fucking way. I was like, Schaefer.
That would be
That's because I was thinking
of
of that character that was like his childhood friend that also had some weird connections. So I'm like,
Right.
what? No way.
So there is author Glenn Enfield, right? He wrote this book called Secrets of the SS, and he, in chapter 16 of this book, all right, it's the chapter's title is South American Reich, and I encourage everybody to go read that chapter because it is just insane what the hell the implications are. And so he basically makes the argument in this chapter that Operation Condor, they discovered, is an intelligence gathering organization that concentrates on leftists around the world, and especially those who are exiled from any of Condor's member countries. But according to a top secret report issued by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Condor has special teams assigned to travel anywhere in the world to assassinate persons on the Condor hit list. It was then learned through further investigation that the headquarters of Condor was in Chile, and the organization worked very close with the DINA, the Chilean secret police, headed by Contreras, who was involved in an assassination in Washington, D.C., right? Who was a prominent Chilean exile from Allende's government, right? After he was overthrown and Pinochet was put into power by the CIA, basically placed into power after the violent coup. And this diplomat who was exiled, he was working in D.C. at the time. He was literally assassinated in September of 1976, right? And it was by a car bomb. And so I thought this was just so poignant, the way that he wrote this chapter, because he says, few investigators of the crime gave a thought to Hitler's SS at the time. And then he goes through an elaborate thread of connections as to how members of the DINA secret police under Pinochet's government were basically working with Paul Schaefer and ex-members of the Nazi SS at Colonia Dignidad to imprison dissidents at Colonia, the compound that's behind 30 miles of an electrified fence, man, that has a sophisticated targeting censored alert system that just based on if you touch one area of the fence, it'll light up on a switchboard and it'll show whoever's manning the board exactly what area of the fence was touched. And I mean, it's literally a concentration camp, man. I mean, they have reinforced bunkers and miles of tunnels underneath, which I thought was pretty extraordinary.
Tunnels, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say is that this WilliamBranham.org is basically an archive where you can find some of the historical research that I'm mentioning right now. And so published on June 2nd, 2005, and citing sourcing from WilliamBranham.org. They say between Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, and that's in real time, June 2nd, 2005, while the compound was being raided, the Chilean authorities found on the Colonia's premises, in addition to 3 arms depots, the secret files of the Colonial Dignidad. According to sources of the investigation, in several folders, there were about 500 files of various political leaders and artists, as well as records of people who disappeared during the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet between 1973 and 1990. Which, by the way, they unearthed like a mass grave, and Pinochet allegedly ordered it to already be dug up prior to this, and bodies be incinerated and then thrown into it's very interesting how all this took place. And it's so crazy to me that I guess maybe if I had studied the rat lines a little in depth before this, I would have stumbled on this story beforehand. But it really blew my mind that I wasn't aware of this, and so, like I said, what else did they find was allegedly one of these files had been given the name John F. Kennedy, and inside were 2 bullets of the same caliber that had allegedly been used in the assassination of JFK.
No way.
Yeah, and so they had an arsenal, all right, at this compound. And it included dozens of surface-to-air missiles, rocket launchers, submachine guns, hand and cluster grenades, rifles, anti-personnel mines, automatic pistols, and a large amount of ammunition. And as the investigation continued, officials discovered sarin gas and even revealed that the cult compound had indeed been manufacturing chemical and biological weapons.
Well, shit. All right. I do want to, I'd love to talk about this more, but I do, and maybe we will in some future point, but especially once you drop the episode, I'm sure I'll have some thoughts next week. But I do want to get into the latest in the Trinidad stuff. I was originally going to do like an episode, on this, and I think I will later, but because and you'll understand once you guys understand what's going on here. For those who have checked out my entire OKC playlist and understand, in part 8 we go into a lot of stuff with Trinidad and his story and his brother's story and kind of where he's going, because he's been in this like multi-decade saga of fighting the federal government for more information about the Oklahoma City bombing, essentially because they killed his brother. And this is the newest in the rounds of it. Almost 30 days ago, he essentially did a FOIA suit. I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know. I'm going to be using the wrong terms. And he put forth a FOIA suit. And, because he had 8.5 years ago asked for information about Roger Moore and some other stuff and some FOIAs. And he's kind of like, well, it's been long enough, so now I'm going to, essentially file a motion to sue or something along those lines. And from there, now the feds essentially have 30 days. It's the Department of Justice, I believe. They have 30 days to respond. So we're kind of any day now, whether, I don't know what respond necessarily means, whether that means, they try to give him the information that he's asking for, which I doubt they would actually give all the information. They'd probably give some heavily redacted shit, and he'd probably still end up pushing forward with this FOIA lawsuit. But either way, I think we may start getting revelations soon about some big stuff. And then a lot of this is stuff that we already kind of knew, but it's just that we're trying to claw out actual documents that prove this out. But I guess, do you have any thoughts? Austin, you read this. Just kind of want to let people know. So I do think I'll probably, when this actually, whatever the next thing is, maybe at some point in this legal, saga, the specific one of his, he has other ones still ongoing. I'll probably add some sort of episode to the OKC playlist to understand where it's at. Because this is probably like, trying to do is probably like one of the biggest heroes of the story of Oklahoma City bombing.
It, bro.
Because, at least like for real world impact, like he spent like essentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars fighting this over multiple decades just because they killed his brother. He was able to get some money in a civil suit to kind of like, he won in a civil suit against the federal government. And that was what kind of funded this continuous thing. Because he did try the criminal courts, he tried civil courts. Now I think he's kind of gotten to the point where like he's exhausted all his avenues within civil and criminal side of things. And he got like small wins here and there. But it's been the FOIA suit, so he's been really pushing since then because it's still like he will put forth make a FOIA request, Freedom of Information request, and then after that they'll fucking then it'll become this back and forth because they're supposed to give it to you. So and you're able to sue them if they don't. It's just most people don't because they don't have the funds or the ability. But this guy just happened to get $1 million from the Department of Justice because he killed his brother. And then also it happened to be a lawyer. So he's able to kind of like do a lot of the work on his own and, not have to get some crazy crack team of, legal, like of lawyers, essentially. He is the lawyer and he's been pushing this shit for forever. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. I think it's interesting. I think we're going to get some revelations this year. I mean, like I said, whatever information comes out of this, even with his other case is still like, I remember months ago, we were waiting for stuff to come out because I've been kind of following this stuff. Months ago, for some reason, I was under the impression there was going to be a ruling. Maybe there's something different that happened, but there was the witness tampering with the PatCon agent,
right?
That became this other thing where then that FOIA lawsuit took a different turn and became another thing that, accusing the federal government of tampering. So I don't know if that'd be criminal or criminal or what, but essentially according to Dave Matthews, according to trying to do relayed to, did I say Dave?
You said Dave again.
Oh, fuck. I always fuck that up. But according to John Matthews, as relayed by Trinidad, so you do have to kind of take Trinidad's word, because officially speaking, I think, I believe him too.
Right.
But I think officially on the record, John Matthews just stepped out and didn't really give a ton of reasons. Right. But then Trinidad came along and said, hey, he told me that the reason why is because you fuckers threatened him. Essentially, I think they were threatening his like a disability, through the VA, essentially.
That's crazy.
Because he was a veteran. So essentially, they were threatening his money, which I would assume. I mean, I did 11 years active duty, so I know a lot of people who went through the disability process. And like, if you get 100% disability through the military, which I'm sure he got hooked the fuck up, especially being a PatCon agent and stuff like that.
Right.
So like, I'm sure he probably had 100% military disability, which is depending on what you were, either got out or retired of after. I forget I think they base it off of that. So like, I guess it's quite substantial. Like I'm not gonna lie, I've considered some kind of active. Technically, I could apply for it. I know people who really aren't that fucked up, and there's a good chance I'd probably get like $1,000 a month from the government. Part of it's because like I just feel gross about it, and then part of it's like I'm not that I am kind of fucked up because I've done manual labor my whole life, but it's like, I signed up for it, so it's like whatever. I don't know. Maybe there's this pride. Maybe I should just try to get whatever money I can get out of the federal government, but it also is some part of me is like worried that it's something that could be used as a fucking chip if they ever try to be like, I don't know if there's some rules somewhere to where they can do shit like this and pull your stuff if they feel you've done something. So it's like, I'm kind of rambling now. I guess I'm kind of trying to give a quick breakdown of this situation. I do think this will probably be covered in my show sometime soon at some point in this ongoing trial process. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and I mean, even just between these two separate cases, there's a lot going on. The witness tampering, PACON, this expansive fucking federal like surveillance on like militia movements, and then on this side you have that. Hey, was this motherfucker that McVeigh was palling around with that supposedly he robbed later? Was this guy actually a CIA agent? Because we already knew he was an FBI agent. The motherfucker Moore, admitted it. Yeah, Roger Moore admitted it in I forget the name ever. Yeah, that motherfucker admitted it. He said, what I was doing for the feds was, I might be fucking up this quote, but what I was doing for the feds is fucked up because they blew my cover. He literally said that. Right. I believe it was the Democrat Gazette, but I might be wrong, and I forget the name of the journalist. I might be wrong on that one because I'm recalling it off the top of my head. But yeah, and there were other things that have definitely heavily implied or straight up shown. I can't remember off the top of my head some of the factoids, but he was almost, certainly an FBI informant, and now there's other stuff that suggested he may have been a CIA and asset of some sort, and that's what we're trying to get out. And so it's like, this motherfucker, FBI, CIA, what the fuck happened here?
Exactly. No, I didn't believe. I remember when I did my episode on OKC, like, I didn't believe for a second that robbery was an honest, natural occurring robbery. Like, that was so clearly a setup, and Terry Nichols, he vouches for that all day long. That's all he claims it was. But like you said, man, like, the biggest silver lining in OKC is Jesse Trinidad, honestly. Like, it really is. I mean, just to be sucked sideways into that story, right? To have no other connection until your brother is mistaken for John Doe 2 and gets, hung out to dry in some ridiculous, torture scenario gone wrong after some misidentification allegedly or whatever. But it's like, that for me has always been the silver lining, is thank God for Jesse Trinidad. And like, I think I've said this before, like, if I had a brother, man, like, I want him to love me the way Jesse loves Kenneth, man. Like, honestly.
I did find it interesting in watching that first episode of the Calcinaro thing, and I don't know if maybe you really talked about it much on your show, but the parallels. It is always like,
the
when
brothers
you fuck
asking
over
questions. Yeah. He told me this was bullshit if this happens.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, that one's probably a little bit more overt in some senses, and the fact that he said that to his brother. Exactly. But I mean, I don't really feel like Kenneth. I mean, maybe there's something I remember somewhere where he made some comment to. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm thinking something else. I swear, maybe he made some sort of comment about feeling threatened or something. But I really doubt that Kenneth had any idea what the fuck he was going on.
It didn't seem like it. Yeah, he's like
I think he got mixed up.
He talked to Jesse on the phone. He's like, "We're good, bro. Yeah, everything's cool."
Yeah, well, I think he did say something along the lines. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm recollecting this wrong somehow. I swear somewhere I remember reading something along the lines of he did say something about like, the fact that they might be threatening him or acting weird or something. But I don't think he really had any sort of idea of what the fuck he was stepping in. Like,
I think it happened very quickly when he was taken to that transfer facility, right? Mm-hmm. Because that was what was really unusual, was that, they brought him to OKC. But did they instantly take him to that transfer facility? I can't remember now. I do remember
the process in which, like,
the guy that was near the cell is who seemed to make a lot of pretty detailed claims about what he heard going on, So but man, Jesse Trinidad, he's a hero, brother. No doubt.
For sure. Well, all right, we're going to transition to the second half of the show. There's no one in the queue right now, so I did send out on my Twitter @TowerGangJose. We have 170 people watching this live or more. I'm not sure if it populates the numbers from Rumble. So between all of you guys, if you guys have some specific questions or things you'd like us to talk about, or if you'd like to shoot the shit with us, you're welcome to hop on. This is kind of we're doing it. Like I said, I just dropped that on Twitter. And if no one shows up, we'll just kind of talk to the live chat for a while. There were a few little points in there I noticed throughout that, see right here, my point. Like, I think it was McCurtain Gazette, the report he was saying they're keeping someone, he's saying someone else. You should hop on, Tim. I know you're a patron, so you have the fucking link in multiple spots. I'm not quite sure what you mean there, but I know there were a couple comments you made throughout, and so you might be able to clear up some of the stuff we're talking about. I'm sure you have some thoughts if you have a moment. But with that, I do want to let you guys know about my sponsor. I have Fox and Sons. I've been getting coffee from him about once, quite a few bricks from him about once a month. The shit is dope. I've been drinking that stuff black, and I'm usually a guy likes a little bit of cream in it, but the stuff's so delicious. And that's not to say it's not bold, not strong. It is. It's just, goes down good. And for those who actually like coffee, it's some delicious stuff. He's not just an advertiser. He supports people who do stuff like I do. It helps get the word out for stuff like this. He started the coffee out of the love, started the business out of love for his for coffee, and to honor times he had with his dad. So he took that stuff he learned from his dad and turned that into teaching his kids about entrepreneurship and spending time with them as well, and giving them something to pass on to in the future. And I think for a lot of those who are paying attention to the economy, that's really important stuff. You need to think about what you're going to be leaving to to the future generations. I do think it's whether that be property or businesses or whatever. I think the typical, everyone knee-jerk, we need to give them a college fund. Okay, cool, that's great, but, it'd be a lot cooler giving them some sort of business to come back to, some sort of property that you're going to pass on to them, or something along those lines. That's going to be much more meaningful going forward. But this is high-quality stuff, fresh, sourced from small family farms, fair trade, small batch. Order ship fast, and after the end of February, get free shipping on orders over $37.99. Oh, we're out of February, so that's outdated. But I don't know if that still applies. But use code Jose at checkout. Let them know I sent you. Get some sales sent my way. Let them know that hey, I'm scratching his back. You scratch mine. The coffee's fucking delicious. He's one of our people. Go support that shit. But with that, let's get in there. Like I said, there's still nobody. So from now, we're gonna just talk to fucking. Paul, this is the first one that popped up. What are your thoughts on Paul Weissapal? That name sounds familiar. Does that name ring a bell to you?
No, I just looked it up. It looks like he's some sort of special agent in charge.
Bring it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, I think I know what this is. You want to bring it up? If you're able to present it, you have it up already. You can probably bring up the picture. Yeah, because I think I know that's what he's talking about. I think I know what he's talking about. I think that's the one everyone makes the theory about McVeigh, because the idea is that he's a sheep-dipped agent. I believe Paul Weissapal is the one agent people point out looks a lot like him. I think people make some parallels about the time and his service and stuff. Which, I guess doesn't kind of look him. I do remember one time Richard Booth on some like autistic thread or reply thing or something. I remember reading something where he was really pointing out like the differences in their facial structure, like their ears, stuff like that. I don't remember. I'm of the opinion I don't think that's McVeigh. Like, even if you do think he sheep dipped, I think he got fucking killed. Like I'm just being real. Like, I don't think he was that essential to whatever operations were going on. If we're gonna go full schizo, that he was part of some sort of black ops team that did this or some shit, and he was like sheep dipped or whatever. Or you want to say he was part of a sting and then that got infiltrated by a CIA op or whatever, and he was the good soldier and kept his mouth shut and they hooked him up. I think maybe that there's a possibility he thought that. Right. That he was going to be that, because he was saying that. There are multiple reports of him saying that, but that's just him saying that. That could be somebody telling him that too. That like, hey, we'll get you back, but let's be real. People get burnt when you get to fucking that level of like, loose ends. What makes me
most skeptical of that narrative is that the psychological evaluation was performed by Jolly West. I mean, that alone made me basically think that, okay, so he could have just implanted false memories in Tim McVeigh's mind. And who knows, this could have been, part of the operation all along. You embed these false memories in McVeigh's mind, and he truly believes that, and I'm sure you reassure him all along the way with his handlers and and you try to convince him that go through with this to the nth degree and we will protect you with this, fake, chemical agent that won't actually like go through with the execution process. But yeah, to me, no way. Like unless facial reconstructive surgery is really that sophisticated. And even then, I mean, like, would they really like go to that extreme, or would they just get rid of the loose end,
I mean, from my looking into McVeigh, I think he was also a bit of a loose cannon. If you're taking that understanding, like if you read Aberration, The Heartland Real, if you're taking the narrative that he was some sort of sheep-dipped agent, there are multiple things in his, lore of, people reporting he did this and did that in the years prior. especially like after the military, where it looks like if he was programmed, he was struggling with it, or whether it be programmed or he was assigned or some combination of the two. He seemed to be struggling with it. Was going through some issues. Didn't seem to want to do it, and I have a hard time believing that would be an act. I mean, I don't know to what level. Maybe there's some act to show to his family who's losing his mind. If you want to take that narrative, I don't fucking know. So the point being is like, I think there's a good chance he went off fucking off reservation a couple times in regards to whatever the plan was. If you're taking that line of thinking,
Terry Nichols said that Larry Potts, he let that name slip on accident when he's all pissed off because allegedly Larry Potts changed the location for the bombing.
Yeah, and I think the Larry Potts thing is bullshit too, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because I think Richard brought up a good point. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that was something along the lines of maybe McVay said to Nichols, knowing he's the kind of guy who's going to squeal just to like throw some sort of weird information in the mix or whatever. I don't know exact motivations. It just wouldn't make sense to me because he was essentially at the time, I believe he was like the deputy or some shit. So they'd be like the number 2 guy. So like I just don't. Yeah, the deputy.
Like, why would he be the one actually handling some operation at that level?
It wouldn't make sense for his like.
That would be very strange.
In the organization, like I get it. Like he would probably be
for
aware
you to
of
physically, personally be calling McVay, "Hey, bro, we got
that." No, that doesn't make sense.
That is strange.
Like he may have had somebody like who was the guy we were talking about it before. That was the show even started about who the agent was. That
Don Jarrett.
That was who John Matthews. I did it again. John Matthews worked for. That was kind of like his handler essentially. So yeah, now like somebody like that level, maybe a little bit higher, something like that. I guess if you're doing some really crazy, sketchy stuff, because that was just like PatCon. I mean, like don't be wrong, PatCon's sketchy too, but that's like. What we're proposing here with the idea of like some, black ops team did it on purpose or some shit. It's a different level than like a PatCon, or at least what PatCon's presented to be, which is like seems to be some sort of infiltration op.
Exactly.
Which I mean, yeah, and you can make the case they did drive them to violence, but it's like, did they necessarily do overt violence themselves? I don't know. That's a gray area. Whereas like. The claims we're making with something else is a little bit more like, we're not the claims, but like we're just like, if you take this line of thinking, that's another leap. So like the idea, my point being, I don't get why you'd be talking to him. It wouldn't make sense to me. The organization
definitely,
that.
I agree. That does seem very strange, but I just remember Larry Potts' role in Ruby Ridge was so direct to him basically being directly involved and implicated in changing the rules of engagement. And, like it really felt like he maybe was in charge of PatCon. Maybe he was. I don't know. I mean, it's possible because he seems to be one of the key operators making like decisions throughout the course of these operations that happen, during this time. So I don't know, man, like it's hard for me to entirely dismiss it because of how often he comes up, but I can't be certain either. So but it does sound ridiculous to me that he would be the one personally, actually trying to deal with McVay. That would be very weird. I mean, how would you plausibly deny something like that? I don't know if it's so direct, but
yeah.
Anyway,
we have a guest. I'll wait for them to hook up. I did want to bring up. We were talking about the suitcase bomb earlier. I think with what's the neutron bomb or whatever heck that piece was, that with the Ruckanshuto guy, or whatever the hell his name is. They talk about a lot in the Hoffman book, which I'm currently actually making my way through right now. I like it. I like the book. I mean, I do think he does take a little bit more of a salacious view, I guess you might be able to say, but I'm kind of like hip with that, and I would say some of the information is probably where I think the time that book came out, I think it's a little bit more. Some of that stuff is probably, whether I'm aware of them or not, has probably some of the information, other stuff has come out, especially when it comes to the bombing stuff, come out later that would like dispute some of that stuff. So like that's more like on the ground information, I guess, in the perspective of history. So I think people should probably view that book with that in mind and don't be like with every little thing, be like, well, look, he's some fucking disinfo agent or some shit. Not saying Hoffman was at all, but I'm just saying I know a lot of the research community gets caught up in that like purity spiraling type stuff. So it's like, I do think, some of that stuff was a little bit more on the ground information, but there was a lot of interesting stuff with the some of the claims of different, supposed witnesses. I don't know the veracity of all of them with the, whether it was a suitcase bomb or not. So I know there's weird stuff of people seeing like static in the sky or some shit. I don't know how true that stuff is. So, but if it's true, that I don't know. Okay, maybe they did. I don't fucking know. But either way, I just like, especially since the information I think to some extent came from Rick and Shudo and kind of who he is and kind of the place he's played in other things. You're kind of like, I don't know, man. Chubburger, I see you in the chat and trying to get in the queue. I don't know what's going on. He says you need to connect your mic or cam or whatever. So, I still have you in the queue. So once it lets me bring you up, I will. I mean, you don't have to go on cam, so you can just go on just audio if you can figure that out. You should be able to figure out in the background, know what's going on.
I do, by the way, I do agree
ahead.
with what Tim said in the chat about like everything that went wrong for him to be killed, right? Happened, but he's dead probably. It's like, I do lean that he's dead probably, just because why the hell would you leave such a large, such a ridiculously,
Feel free to bring up the chat because I'm in a different spot in the chat. I'm working from the top bottom. So if you do want to like bring it up, I'm assuming you're towards the bottom, but so I may not be seeing what you're referring to.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
But basically, I was just saying, like, I remember that lady who was there, like, presiding over the execution of McVeigh, right? Like, her detailed, like, witness account of not really seeing, it seemed like she was questioning everything that took place. And it also seemed like they did not, carry out the execution according to protocol at the very least, and and beyond
weird stuff there. There definitely
very
is.
weird.
I will say that. So when people do say he didn't die, I'm not like at all like saying to the counter narrative, be like, you guys are fucking silly for having this idea. I'm like, no, I mean there is some stuff that I'm like, okay, weird shit. Like another stuff with the coroner, or not the coroner, but the guy who killed it. Like he clearly had been in trouble before, and been accused. He even said on record something along the lines of like, oh, I don't even know how much I fucking gave him, and like there's some other weird stuff. He wanted he wanted to be cremated. Apparently, that was what was
and
said.
Remember, his father
no one to
was
know
like
it.
trying really hard to basically make sure he would receive McVeigh's body after the execution happened, and McVeigh spent his entire remaining duration on death row, awaiting execution, using his attorneys to attempt to make for certain his own father wouldn't be able to witness his body after the fact, which that was one thing that like really stood out to me. Other than that, I think it was this story I read about how they basically faked the media and faked people who were there at the time physically, who were awaiting the hearse to take McVeigh's body away, and that they threw off the media helicopter, and like had a secondary vehicle with his actual body in it and all this. So that was like, it couldn't be more unusual. Surrounding his
weird.
death,
yeah,
right?
And then also just the rush with which they really were trying to make it happen, and all the thing, like it was there was weirdness. And even when I know there was like the leaks of some of the stuff that supposedly, and it was part of the lore of that, there was a lot of legal information that came out that was being withheld by the prosecution, and so the defense never got a chance to see it, and so then they tried to be like, stay the execution so they can try to do it, and then it like, I think I want to say McVeigh actually went along with it. It was like fine, he agreed to it or whatever. But like they still didn't really give him enough time to really give any sort of like decent appeal. And it just kind of like, and they were essentially bombarded with information to try to parse through, because it was like so much in so little time. And then like, so it's like, I mean, I don't fucking know. I mean, a lot of that information I think was stuff that like didn't even really see the light of day in books until Wendy Paintings came along. So she did have a lot of revolutionary stuff in regards to that, because she really picked away at all the stuff, went through all the information, which was so much, which is also why like Richard Booth, I think the service he's offering is super important. the archive over at the Liberty Institute, the OKC archive. Because that thing is like literally all or at least everything he's been able to get hands on, like documents related to it. And there's so much to dig through, and a lot of this stuff is just stuff people just haven't really, processed, or like made certain connections or whatever. So like in the modern day of the internet, I'm like, I think we're, the fact that they did stuff like that in the past is the kind of thing that's going to bite them in the ass, because we're getting to the part of like the decentralized research community is getting so expansive, or just people just retards on Twitter. They're like, well, this looks weird, that looks weird, and they just find this document, that document. We're getting to the point to where it's like, oh, all that stuff you left thinking no one would ever look into before. Well, no, okay, now someone's wrote a book. Okay, now a bunch of Twitter schizos are making memes. Okay, now there's some other podcaster. Now there's this guy. Now it's the fucking, it's just like a snowball effect. And it's like, oh, fuck. Yeah.
100%, man. Yeah. But yeah, and I like, honestly, I should have maybe given a little bit more of my attention to some of the narratives surrounding the body doubles and stuff like this when it comes to, like, I mean, even Stephen Paddock, there was a lot of, somewhat credible information out there.
That's a common thing. I know it sounds silly, but but a lot of that can be attributed to sometimes like misidentifications or this or that, and a lot of simple explanations of why there's like mix-ups. But a lot of times there's so much of that pattern, you're like, what the fuck is... I know like Lee Harvey Oswald's probably like the most prominent one that's like for those of... I think there's someone wrote a whole book on it. I mean, I haven't read it, so I don't really know enough of the idea of that, like, that there were two Lee Harvey Oswalds, and then on top of that, like, there were legitimately two Lee Harvey Oswalds that like existed and like were documented and existed, and then there was weird mix-ups about when they were being spotted where, and then there's other stuff. I mean, the same thing happens with McVeigh. That's when you get like so deep in the weeds. I'm like, I'm gonna get fucking lost, because you're trying to track like who saw who when. You also have to take into account like, well, who twisted this information as an intermediary for the information. Like, like, I don't fucking know. Like when you're trying to get into that level of like fuck. That's why it's easier to be like, all right, well, fucking 20 plus people saw John Doe too. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Got Guy Vermectin in the chat. Thomas Massey is bringing Julian Assange's brother to the State of the Union address. By the way, we're up to like 190 live people. And still nobody in the... So if someone wants to pop in, like I said, it's on my Twitter. Feel free to pop in. Otherwise, I'm fine with continuing to go this. Do you have any thoughts on this? I don't really know how big of a deal. I mean, it's cool he's doing that. Yeah. I don't really know.
I mean, if you can do anything, maybe to bring more attention. But I mean, I don't know how the hell, right? Like, we haven't basically peaked in the amount of people who are aware of Julian Assange and his situation. So it's just kind of sad, honestly, that it's still so overlooked, to be honest. But I mean, I guess enough people are... I have seen rejuvenated, I guess I've seen WikiLeaks posting a lot lately, at least a little bit more, which has been cool to see. But yeah, there's just not enough groundswell of grassroots support for him. In my opinion, it seems like people are way more concerned with the culture war. It just says, honestly.
Yeah, all more worried about chicks with dicks. So I think this guy might be trying to pick a little bit of a fight in a respectful manner. He said the Vegas shooting show is still my favorite you two have done. I didn't do that. People attribute that to me all the time. I have not had Austin on for the Vegas one. Everyone always assumes. I think it's because we've done two other series. We did the Jonestown series and we did the Finders Cult series. So I think everyone assumes. I actually recommended you, I think, to Clint, and like, hey, you need to get this guy on your show. And then there's something within his like stuff he's covered that I know that you like, that you will want to cover, like, especially if you're looking for like something in this vein, like parapolitics at some point. Right. And I know there's like a few things he's always been interested in. Vegas shooting was one, so I guess that's probably why he was drawn to that and wanted to cover that with you. So yes, that was on Liberty Lockdown, Clint Russell's show, my co-host on Tower Gang. So that was that was on his show, and it was a really good one. It would have been a different format if it was me. It would probably been like 3-4 episodes or more. So, but it was a good dive.
Blowing up my spot, bro. He just mentioned something that was in I think one of the unreleased Jonestown episodes that I had mentioned Assange and the family, that cult with the platinum blonde hair and that lady in Australia.
Well,
and
maybe
I
if we don't
just
get any
saw
call-ins, we can get to that.
yeah, for real, dude.
For now, this guy wants to pick a fight with you. He's saying Austin, but
Let's
Austin,
do it,
that
man.
Saudi connection thing is a farce, and the Mary Lou one
How
is stronger
dare
one
you.
to look at. I don't know how strong you feel about this. I mean, I don't know. When I heard you break down the Saudi one, I didn't think you were saying that this was for sure. There's like, hey, this is just
Right.
one thread you can tug on. Maybe there's something there. Here's some weird connections. I don't know what your thoughts. You have a much better grasp on Vegas shooting than I do. The extent of I've looked into it is Mindy Robertson has a good documentary on it with a lot of the calls and stuff.
I actually found out about that when I did that Spaces with Mayor Kate, which that was a very unique experience. I'm telling you, man, I did not expect to be in there for 5 hours. I was literally
I can't do Spaces.
Bro,
sorry, go ahead.
I had no idea what I was getting into, but at the same time, it was like, it was valuable as hell. And it was very nice to meet, Mayor Kate and what's her name that hosted it. They were very cool. But yeah, I included the Saudi connection because I really do think it's compelling. I honestly do. I think there's enough information out there. I think that there's enough evidence you can actually point to that you can't rule it out. You can't dismiss it. And the only arguments that I've often got, at least received in regard to that, is basically that the Saudi royal family is very large, and that they really, it wasn't a compelling enough argument for me. It was basically just that they don't operate that way. They don't move that way. They wouldn't be in Vegas like that. You know what I mean? But it was never anything like with corroborating evidence that MBS wasn't there that night. I mean, it's nothing like that, right? So that's my issue, especially when I can point to, I mean, his cousin, and Al-Talal, when it comes to the real core argument. Because honestly, man, I mean, multiple reports in regard to Vegas suggest that the massacre was presented to the public as just another mass shooting, opportunistically exploiting the tragedy while providing another false flag event in order to cover up the assassination attempt on MBS. But it honestly, when you get into it, like the Independent even reported by November 6th that Saudi Arabia's young crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, and this is them reporting on the purge, right? Which occurred right after the Vegas shooting. And also, I feel like people aren't aware of the political alliances that were playing out at this time, especially within the transition of the Obama administration to the Trump administration. And there were loyalties divided within the administration they were Obama holdovers, and they were actively working against the Trump administration, whether you want to believe it or not. I mean, that was 100% occurring at this time. And so it falls perfectly in line with Fast and Furious. And I know he wasn't arguing with me about, Mary Lou Danley, which I do believe is the most important and most crucial smoking gun with Vegas. But honestly, like when you have bin Al-Talal admitting himself, right, that he sent a team of snipers to the Mandalay Bay, the weekend of literally that night, right? That to me is compelling. I mean, I understand that the only thing that I would say you could point to that would draw that into question would be that it was under interrogation. You know what I'm saying? So but the fact that you do have some sort of trail of evidence that you can point to, that at least you have an out and out claim that yes, this happened. So that's why I think it's worth mentioning, is that, you have Silkway Airlines, Azerbaijani state-run cargo airline that was exposed in February 2017 as being a major carrier for arms to terrorists, that had hidden diplomatic cargo, and whom Bulgarian investigative reporter Dilyana Gaitensheva, she documented that the CIA was a major customer of, and that after making these revelations was interrogated, tortured, and then fired from her job for linking the CIA to Syrian terrorists. And when President Trump was alerted to these former Obama regime officials approving Silkway Airlines flights into the U.S., I mean, FBI forces loyal to Trump revealed that an early June 2017 flight of this airline, Silkway's airline, landed in Chicago and was met by known associates of the Razdan Shulaya, who is a mafia leader, right? That operates out of Vegas, and and he gets apprehended along with his entire network right after this takes place, right? Which I thought was insane. FBI forces put him under arrest, and on August 1st, a Silkway Airlines flight from Dubai was scheduled to land in Chicago, but whose arrival was delayed until August 3rd because of mechanical issues. But upon its arrival, that's when an American man named Stephen Paddock was at the U.S. Customs Gate of O'Hare International Airport to allegedly accept this plane with all these guns on it, which to me is a tip of the hat to Operation Fast and Furious, which, you know, especially when you read the email correspondence between Mayor Lou Danley and Stephen Paddock, that alone is like they're figuring out a way to market their new 100-round magazines. You know, like it's ridiculous to me, especially when they're implicated by this Gaitan Shiva, this journalist who connects them. And we know that under Fast and Furious, we were arming and funding the Syrian moderate rebels. We know this, I mean, that's already proven. So anyway, to finish up that tangent, after the FBI linked both Las Vegas-based Russian mafia leader Razdan Shulaya and Vegas-based Stephen Paddock, SVR, the Russian intelligence service, their analysts, they legitimately determined that they were clearly both a part of an international arms smuggling operation and laundered their millions of dollars of profit through Vegas, right? That's why he allegedly was addicted to playing video poker. No, he was actually laundering dirty money. And the reason he didn't have a background of any kind you could point to, he's a private person, his brother claims, but in reality, he's just a spook, Yeah.
He's privately employed by the federal government. Yeah.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a ghost. So, exactly, dude. But this last part. So, news from the perimeter. They said that on November 3rd, all right, 1 month after the massacre, a missile was intercepted by the Saudi military. The suggestion is that this was the final effort by the anti-King Salman faction to take him out. All right. And 2 days later, on the 5th, this is when a massive raid on the Wahhabi-aligned Saudi palaces took place. So a handful of the anti-Salman faction were killed. 10 princes, including Al-Walid, were held for 80 days at the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh, high-class prison. And according to attorney Matthias Chang, and I'll give him this. This isn't at least it's a weaker connection than I would like to have. So yeah, I will give him that. Mm-hmm. But according to Matthias Chang, who's an attorney, Saudi Prince Al-Walid admitted under interrogation that he sent an elite team of snipers from the Saudi Royal Air Force to the Mandalay Bay Hotel on the night of the Las Vegas massacre. I mean, how do you not at least consider that? Like I understand, like if you want to dismiss it, I'm not going to argue with you. I understand. At least we can agree that, at least I hope we can agree that Stephen Paddock was not some deranged psychopath who decided to shoot a concert, or a massive festival of concert goers. Like that was clearly not the case. Like in my opinion, he was an arms dealer, right? And I think that there is compelling enough evidence, especially with the helicopter story of the exfiltration that it, potentially happened. I think it lends credibility to the Saudi connection. I think there's even more than that when you look at the team of security around who, when you watch that video, you cannot fully dismiss that that's MBS. I don't care who you are. I've watched it a million times. You can't say for certain. And beyond that, the security, look, he's clearly a highly protected asset being ushered through the ground level of this casino. And when they come in, man, they're armed security guards. But I mean, the guy in the front clearly apparently he had a unique assault rifle that was 100% unique to Mossad. And that made a lot of sense to me, especially when you see how aggressive they were behaving.
How Israel be acting.
100%. But also how aggressive they were behaving when they went into the casino floor. I mean, they're pointing their guns at everybody in that casino and forced all of their arms up, So,
I mean, Israel was born out of terrorism. It literally was. For
100%, man.
Yeah, like the literal, like multiple leaders of the entire country, let alone like other major factions, were at one point literal members or heads of actual terrorist organizations in the pursuit of creating a Jewish state. So, right. I mean, I'm not saying anything that's, for those who want to say anti-Semite, which I don't even care, I'll laugh at you, but like, that is not even, like, that is just historical fact. Right. Like, these are people on record that have said that, like, yeah, it was that, like, we were literally advocating terrorism. They called themselves terrorists. Literally were creating false flag bombings in other countries to drive the Jewry towards Israel.
Menachem Begin? Yeah. I mean, when you read about him, oh my God, brother. Like that, the Irgun, holy shit. You want to, the
Stern Gang?
God. Oh my God.
The fucking Stern Gang?
That's what I'm saying, man.
Those fucking cold-blooded, soulless killers.
You'll never forget those stories, ever. I'll never forget Menachem Begin's name. I'll never forget it, honestly. I think it's so important that, we really take it seriously. We need to honestly recognize the fact that it's not anti-Semitic to point out the honest truth about the aggressive war crimes. And what was it?
I don't hate all Jews. I just don't like the Jews doing this.
Right. I forget, it was Paulo Freire, I think was who it was. And he said basically that it's a recurring tale throughout time, throughout history. The story of the oppressed becoming the oppressors. Right. And I think to a certain degree, that's basically what's occurred, man. I mean, I don't know, because it does seem like the more I dig, the more all recorded history is it's a little bit far-fetched.
I just brought this up right now. I was thinking about bringing it up in our main portion, depending on how we were with topics. There's recent, this is according to Ralph Nader, charges massive undercount of Palestinians killed in Gaza from accounts of people on the ground, videos and photographs of deadly episode after episode, plus the resultant mortalities from blocking or smashing the crucial necessity of life. A more likely estimate, in my appraisal, is that at least 200,000 Palestinians must have perished by now, and the toll is accelerating by the hour. Now, once again, I do say this came from what did I say? Ralph Nader. I don't know a ton about Ralph Nader, how much, obviously it just sounds like him speculating on the amount. But the point that I'm driving at here is, that's the high end. So like a high end estimation, which is really all we have is estimations when you're dealing with any sort of death counts on these, on these levels. It's fully possible that the death tolls could, once things settled, we do see it's around 200,000, because, it's just borderline impossible to record. But I mean, we're at a point right now where the low end records, like from the people who would be incentivized to keep the count low, we're getting 30,000 at this point. Jesus. So we're looking at 30,000 to 200,000 that's being
so insane, bro.
Just fucking killed. And like, I put out a tweet today. It's like the temerity of, like, it's just astounding. There are people that still have temerity to advocate for this, and whether it's explicit or implicit, if you're just not simply able, and I'm not the kind of person who likes to say, oh, you need to condemn this, you need that, and I'm not even saying people need to, but like, if you're discussing that and you just can't even just say that this is just barbarism.
Right.
Like that this is not in any sense a semblance of a way to achieve justice.
Right.
Like, if you can't just say that like this is literally barbarism, it's kind of like, what? Like, what do you have? Like, you have no moral backbone? Are you not a critical thinker? Like, what is going on here? Because it is just like, and it's just to the point. And I'm not even saying that like you should simply see a number and be like, whoa, but like for people who are of a lower order of thinking or haven't really, explored, really delve deeper into thinking, about other things outside their immediate world, I can get how like the number would just be like, oh, what the fuck? Like like that, we've gone to the point to where it's like just the number alone. Are you trying to tell me that a substantial portion of, we'll take your low estimate, 30,000, a substantial portion of those were actual Hamas fighters and people worthy of being killed? Is that what you're telling me? Because I highly doubt that we're in that range. I'd be surprised if 20% of those were. And like, that's me being conservative. And like, really, I think it's likely in the probably less than 5,000, if I had to guess, actual Hamas fighters that have actually perished in these sort of things. Actual combatants that you would be able to make some sort of legitimate case is worthy of death. Because the rest of these are just people getting carpet bombed that are fucking like civilians that just live in this area. And you can make the argument, oh, well, they support Hamas. It's like, okay, well, what has Israel been fucking doing to them? And also, that logical line of argumentation would make like us responsible for the horrors. Well, I guess not us, more our family, our parents' generation. But even then, that plays into this argument too, because these people haven't voted on Hamas in something like almost like 20 years. But either way, like, say we accept this line of argumentation, it's still like, that would be the conclusion would be that our parents' generation is completely, legitimate to genocide them because of the war on terror.
Exactly.
Like,
no, I honestly, it's so much easier to just be principally anti-war. Like, why is that so hard? But really, this is the most difficult conflict in my mind. Maybe that's because of my direct connection with people I know and love, but I feel like it's the blurred lines between religion and politics, man. It's consumed. It's honestly, it's taken on a new form, and it's fallen perfectly onto the two sides of the political spectrum that I talk about all the time, and that's what's happening again. But it's this. What are the consequences here, man?
Right, guys, I'm not going to allow anti-Semitism in my chat. I will block you. I just want to let it be known. Oh, I'm just totally kidding. I don't understand I said an anti-Semitic argument. Why do I need a hidden ulterior motive to think bombing kids is bad? Like, that's why I don't even, like, if anything, like, I mean, sometimes I even borderline lean into it. But like, if this is your terms of what makes me an anti-Semite, then sure, I'm a fucking anti-Semite. I don't give a fuck. Like, if that's how you define, this word, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. I'm whatever you don't like. You are a fucking ghoul. At that opinion that like that for one that you would even make this fucking argument that like, because the same thing with all the commies that are like fucking for this. And you know what? Like, okay, we can agree sometimes. This is how the fucking any logical, understanding of the world works. Is there going to be people that you are diametrically opposed to that you're going to have similarities that you may come together on. And like, that doesn't mean I'm a fucking commie, because I'm like, I don't think we should be, that we should be advocating or funding or even just the idea that you just can't say like, that's not right. That, like, you just can't do that.
Well, if anything, it's really just, it's a measure of their hypocrisy. Yeah. And more of a sign of your consistency, man. Because honestly, like, it's not just the fact that, sometimes we have overlapping interests where we agree on this or that or the other. And it goes the exact same direction with the conservative aisle. I mean, it's the exact same thing I experience all the time. And I don't want to isolate myself from anybody who leans this way or the other. And, unless they're trying to facilitate war crimes, then I'll clearly agree with you openly. But no, I just mean I'm not trying to be off-putting. I would like to, at the very least, like, be as palatable as possible to as wide of an audience as possible. But at the same time, it's like I will never sacrifice my principles for that. But to ever point to that and say like that is like some measure of you being aligned with this political ideology, that's ridiculous, man. Like, no, be proud of how consistent you are in your principles because you have a true moral foundation. You understand ethics, at least basic ethics enough to where you won't fall for the next fog of war and line up to facilitate upcoming war crimes for the next conflict. Because, and thank God, by the way, I know nothing positive will probably occur in regard to Ukraine, but thank God Victoria Nuland, that fat bitch, is out of there, man. I mean, God, fuck the EU. Victoria Nuland,
she may have got her world war though.
Maybe. Yeah, basically set the stage, man. I mean, perfectly, she set the stage. But that's her role. When has she not done that? I mean, I just listened to that recorded phone call, that leaked phone call. WikiLeaks leaked that shit on Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt. And man, get the big guy, get Biden to come in here and put a bow on this thing, about overthrowing, I mean, my God. Right. Yep. And then to be so ignorant to where you can't interpret how something like the invasion of Ukraine could occur. History didn't start yesterday. I mean, why it should never have to say that out loud, but too often that's the case, right?
Yep.
So,
well, all right, man. This has been great. I know we didn't have anyone that actually called in, but we broke 220, and I think live stream. So I think for a debut episode, it seems people is interested in gauging by the size of my platform and stuff. That's really fucking good. So yeah, apparently people liked it. I think it's probably even higher because like I said before, I don't think they include the Rumble count because of the way that you set up those streams. But either way, people seem to be interested in this. Like I said, I know nobody called in, but I guess keep this in mind for next time. This is going to be a weekly thing. The first dibs goes to the patrons, so they get the link way ahead of time. So if you file into the queue ahead of time, I'll see you there first, and I'll kind of bring you at it first. But so I think I'll for now too. I'll also probably like midstream share it. So keep an eye out. Like when I'm doing these streams on my Twitter at TowerGangJose, I'll put out the link so you guys can pop in. But yeah, I think we had a lot of good questions, a lot of good interaction in the chat. I think this could be a winner going forward. So yeah, definitely guys keep popping in for this. I do want to let you guys know for numbering purposes. I know like with my 4 Pony Boys series, like this is kind of similar in that it's like under the banner of No Way Jose, which, I said to Austin before this, he's welcome to put this out on his own platforms or whatever if he decides to go that way. So it can be under his banner as well. But I'm not going to number these like I did with the 4 Pony Boys, like 4 Pony Boys number 1, 4 Pony Boys number 2. So it's just going to be, like for this one, this is No Way Jose 288, debut of Already Dead. From now on, I'll probably just say No Way Jose, whatever the episode number is, and then Already Dead. So you guys can just pop in. You know what this is. This is us just talking about whatever we're spurging on recently or we find to be interesting for the week, and then going into like more of a format of interacting with the audience, see what you guys have to say of it, because you guys, I feel like I have an intelligent audience and is able to, make this interesting, and I think we have a good format that we can just kind of keep this going forward. But Austin, I don't know if you have any final thoughts on how this went. I'm just seeing a live chat. A lot of people seem to, dig it. I thought it was great. I mean, when Namrock brought it up, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like that was one of those things like that would, I immediately like the format formed in my head. I'm like, this will work well. Like I think me and you, our line of interest. I played off the motif of the Already Dead. I mean, it's also a Silverstein song, which I used to love that band. I still like that band, but because someone said Dead Already, and then I was like, I don't know why. I feel like Already Dead, it sounds a more aesthetic sound to it, essentially. And also it is a Silverstein song, so it kind of connects into the aesthetic that I went for with this thumbnail, which that might get cleaned up by Top later with something a little bit, but I liked it. I think it almost has like a weird manga samurai vibe. And I feel like that fits. And that's not at all to say that, the kind of energy I'm getting at with that vibe of the already dead, obviously the people who died in pursuit of truth and stuff. It's not to say that like I think I'm gonna die or I want us to die. Like, at the end of the day, like really, if it was something that like I felt like would impact my family or something, but I think it's just like that inert like thing that is like, if you're a man, I feel like you just understand. There's something like, I'm sure a lot of women have it too, but I think it's like really predominant, man, that energy of like, no, I'm not your bitch. Like that's kind of like the energy. And I think that's what a lot of these people had. And I think there's something to that kind of energy of like, and yeah, they paid the ultimate price. And like, maybe there might be some argument to say that's not great to glorify it, but like, I don't know. I see these as, and I think it ties in well with that like Gladiator intro. Cause like, these are warriors, and like they're igniting a warrior spirit. And like, when there are more warriors, apes together strong, friends together strong. And it's like this idea of the more of us, have this energy, the more it's like they can't snuff us out, because it's like, say for example, like I know I've dug into dark stuff with my geeky stuff and like the 764, and there is like, not that I really thought my danger level was ever really like high with any of these, but it's there. And if they were to do that, because of the audience that I've built and the type of audience and the people that you are and the connections I've made, they would be lighting a fucking nuclear like information fire. It's like that, so it's like, because of this warrior spirit, I feel like I am inoculated from whatever danger, and the more people I can ignite the spirit in, the more we are protected and the more we can destroy the enemy.
No doubt, brother.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts? Just kind of like your thoughts on the format, how this came together, anything, and then you can kind of tell people where they find you at, and we'll get out of here.
Honestly, I really enjoyed it. I had a great time, but
go on.
But yeah, no, I honestly, man, like I said, that edit, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like it really does inspire the hell out of me, and I couldn't be more grateful that just honestly that I'm interested in any of these lines of interest, that I've gone down this avenue of trying to find the alternative narratives that actually make sense, that can just at the very least remove the veil, right? And the biggest part of all of this though was that I was so tired of feeling alone, right? By myself in my own head. I couldn't have these conversations with anyone. It was it was very difficult to engage with basically everyone, around me, which it was the most isolated I've ever felt in my life. And I couldn't be more grateful for being passionate about trying to, I hate being lied to, right? I cannot stand being lied to. And when I smell deceit, I have to pounce, and thank God that my mind works this way, and I'm just very grateful for that. But again, man, like it's a blessing that I met you, brother, and I think that this is special. Whatever we can do to attempt to at least facilitate more of these narratives that seem to shed light on a lot of these high impact events. If we can ever expose an additional mind to someone's story like Terrence Yakey, right? Or Kenneth, man. I mean, like that alone, you've done something worthwhile in your life, So
yeah, and that's another thing with these. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but with these these characters that I feel like, I mean, we're not only going to talk about this stuff, we'll talk about other stuff, but like that's kind of like, I feel like these type of characters that drive us. With these characters, God, I had a fucking point. I completely blanked. But anyways, you go on. I had a good point, and then I was like, as I said, I had another thought, and then I was like, squirrel, and then I was like, shit.
It happens, man.
But either way, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm just.
Oh no, I remember. I was gonna say these are characters that, like, if you can get someone to understand this, it's like, whoa. Like these are like the peak, like. These are the nexus points, in my opinion, where it tugs on the human spirit, and it is like I said, it speaks to that, like within men, that warrior spirit, and you're also just like, what the fuck? Look what they did to this like majestic lion of a human. You know what I mean?
It made me. It lit the fire against the state inside my soul. I mean, honestly, like too many stories like Terry's, like it reconstructed my paradigm, you know. And like I said, the veil fell, and I'll never look back, right? And thank God for that, honestly. And thank God for people like Jesse Trinidad, and thank God for people like Terrence Yakey, right? Who had the moral foundation and just, you know, the willpower, right?
Yeah.
To actually stand up for something like that. I mean, it's a beautiful
I think
thing, man.
This is a good line to probably go out from the last thing from our audience. Isolation is part of the design. It's the impulse from breaking away from the herd. You're not alone, though. Where can they find you at, Austin? Because I recommend your show a lot. I mean, a lot of the stuff we've talked about, if anything, if not even the most of it, has been covered on your show. A lot of stuff, I mean, it's stuff that I've covered as well. But you know, especially for like if it's some sort of topic you want to get introduced into like quickly. Most of his shows are like, you know, 45 minutes or less, and it's very succinct, very detailed, very boom, 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 bullet points. So it gives you all that like information that's, you know, important to the narrative, and like it's stuff that you're like, whoa. So it's not, you know, bogging you down with a bunch of bullshit. And if you do want to get to where you start understanding different facets of it, you can come to like a show like mine, even like series like that, where we go like do, you know, 5 to 15 hours on a topic. And that way you can get more little nitnoid things that do kind of flesh out the story. But I highly recommend it, like even just for like research purposes, you know, check out these. Kind of gives you quick, like great, probably one of the best breakdowns I've heard of like of any shows when it comes to these type of topics, in my opinion. So that's why I immediately gravitated to you. But go ahead, let people know where they can find you, and I recommend your show.
Thank you so much, bro. And yeah, so I'm streaming on strictly audio platforms for the time being. I do have a YouTube, but like I said, I've never actually published on my YouTube yet, but who knows, with this I might actually do that since it's a video format. But we'll see. But anyway, other than that, so any audio podcasting platform, you can basically find the Underclass podcast. And you can follow me on Twitter at Underclass Pod, on Instagram at the Underclass Podcast. That's about it, man.
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Targeting Jose. That's where, like, if you're following these, you can keep an eye out for the links. If you do want to do the call-in thing in the future, that will be an option I leave available. How my show normally works, I'm going to do this, like, I'm shooting for weekly, but not necessarily every week, but pretty much weekly. But how my show normally works is most of my stuff's like paywalled. It usually is more like, you know, series or more deep dives on things. Stuff that's not usually time sensitive. If it is time sensitive, like the 764 stuff or breaking stuff that I'm covering, yes, it will usually be live streamed. But most of my stuff is done, behind the paywall, so you have to get there early. If you're a patron, you get it about a week or so early, give or take. With these Jonestown ones, it's been longer because I've had a lot of breaking stuff, so it's kind of delayed it. So it's been weeks and weeks and weeks for a lot of these people. So they got the scoop way ahead of that. So if you want to do that, it's patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. The lowest level to get that early stuff is $2. It's also the lowest level is I'm for the people who call in and have the first dibs. That'll go on there for the $2 and higher level as well. But for the highest level, I read them off every episode as a sign of thanks for supporting me. And that's my co-host on Tower Gang. You can follow him at Tower Gang Toad. They also have at Abrogate D's, Abrogate D's. You won the it should be 2, unless I misunderstood that, but I believe 2 bags of coffee. So when you see this, hit me up. I got to get your information to the Fox and Sons guys so they can send it over to you. But we're doing it again this coming month, another giveaway. So for patrons, if you do for the $5 and higher, you have access to being in that giveaway for that. So if that's something you want to do, keep that in mind. I still have them as a sponsor for this coming month as well. So you're still open to it, but you got to be a $5 or higher level sponsor. I also have Jacob Daniel, the Biblical Anarchy podcast. You can follow him at Biblical Anarchy. Then I have Tim Tuttle at Jolly on Klebold. He was in the chat a bunch tonight. Then I have at Stinky Sock 420, singer of the band Bender, which is a metalcore band. It seems like most of my intros in the show are always like metalcore stuff. So so I think if you like most of my the vibe when I'm going with that, you'll probably like that. But it's patreon.com/Jose2020. Like, share, subscribe, comment, share this around. We just hit 300, so I'm really impressed with what the reception for this. It seems to be you guys like this format. Hopefully I can stay away from getting strikes to where we can continue to do it this live stream format. I mean, that'll be one of those things that probably throws off the schedule of weekly if I do it. I mean, we said stuff that if they really want to be petty, you could have got hit for already. But yeah, make sure to share this around. I mean, hell, if you want to clip this up, I feel like there was a lot of good moments we had in that. You could do that too. Help share it around. You don't have to be a paying supporter. Obviously, I appreciate it if you are, but if you do want to support the kind of stuff we're doing, help expand that warrior spirit like I was talking about earlier, then I do think at the very least maybe consider sharing, whether it's whatever platforms you have or to individuals but with that, this has been great. I appreciate you guys showing up. Appreciate the reception to this. I knew this was going to be a good idea, and I was right. And Namrock was right.
Oh, yeah.
And we are out.